business, it's always introductions. And I normally start you when I left. And normally with the last people, I'm Gretchen Thomas, I'm with TJ Daniels.
I'm Ben Chambers with the city of Charlottesville, the transportation planning.
And I'm Diana McKeel, representative from Albemarle County Board of Supervisors.
Right, from Charlottesville City Council. Mike Pruitt, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors.
David Blunt, TJPDC staff.
Christine Jacobs, TJPDC Executive Director, staff.
Taylor Jenkins, TJPDC Director of Transportation.
Lucinda Shannon, TJPDC staff.
And let's go to the back right.
John Bartels, Albemarle County resident, but I'm here with Impact.
Welcome, all right,
Alex Joyner, Albemarle County resident and here with them.
welcome, all right,
Noah Ellington, Albemarle County intern.
there you go. All right, with that,
Diantha, do you want to do online?
Oh.
There's
Oh,
two
um,
folks.
oh, didn't see them.
Yeah.
Not to be left out. Brad and Katie, would you introduce yourselves?
You know what? I have to promote them to speakers.
Oh, in order for them to be able to respond.
Yeah, very
That
good.
makes sense.
Excellent.
Hey,
There you go. Grant, can we do a sound check? Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're faint, but we can hear you.
Okay,
Introduce yourself, Brad.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. Grant Sparks, Director of Statewide Transit Programs for DRPT.
Great, and I think Lucinda is giving you some more volume for us, so that's great. And
Okay.
Katie,
She dropped off.
Dropped off.
well, she'll come back home, I guess, at some point. All right. All right,
Two folks.
and somebody just standing behind me?
And yes, transportation.
Oh,
Transit planner.
great, welcome, thank you. All right, I think we have everybody. Board, we have, an agenda in front of us, and I will need, a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
Move for adoption of the agenda.
So we have a motion from Brian and a second from. Looking around.
Oh, second.
It's Sample.
Yeah, we both got it down on the spot. Oh, I got it. Yes.
Lucille. Would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Pinkston. Sorry, Counselor Pinkston.
Yes.
Supervisor McKeel.
Yeah,
Supervisor Pruitt.
Aye.
all right, we have an agenda, and maybe the heat's going to over. Right, okay. We also had draft meeting minutes from May the 22nd. I don't know if anybody has.
There, so I'm gonna have to abstain, so I don't know if you have enough votes to.
That's a good question, we do not. If you're abstaining.
Yeah, but it
we
needs
would
a
not.
quorum is a 3, so we can
Yeah.
just push them to
We'll
the next
just go
meeting.
that moved.
No problem.
But while I have,
Great.
the topic up, did anybody have any corrections or anything for the next meeting, where we can amend them? All right, no one had any corrections, we're good then? All right, sounds good. Then matters from the public limit of 3 minutes per speaker, and we have folks that have signed up or would like to speak. Lucinda?
Is anybody here? Okay, you can,
Come over there.
Why don't you go to the,
yeah,
and I'll see you with here.
Okay.
and
And
it's,
Lucinda is our official timekeeper, and you have 3 minutes,
Okay,
and she'll let you know when you speak.
Got it.
great.
you got it?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, thanks. As I said, I'm Alex Joyner. I'm pastor at Charlottesville First United Methodist Church and serving this year as co-president for Impact, which is an organization of 27 interfaith organization, 27 different congregations in Charlottesville and Albemarle. And I'm a regular rider on the 5, 7, and 11 lines here in CAT. We have been, as Impact, have been working for several years on this transportation and transit network system, primarily working to try to increase the number of drivers to make this system more reliable. I think I'm here really just to encourage you in your work. I think what you have before you is really important. And it feels to me like the next step in building a reliable transportation network is having the city and the county and hopefully the university together to try to put a fragmented system together. So I recognize and I'm grateful for the fact that we have for a small city, we do have a system that people can use for essential services, but is not reliable. We heard at the city council work session on Monday that the on-time performance for CAT is only 68%. And even Garland Williams noted that that was abysmal. So, building the system and finding new revenue streams for the system feels to me like a very important task. And I just want you to know that we're watching and what you're doing is important. So,
Thank you very much. Yep. Anyone else that wants to speak? No? And there's anyone online?
If there's anybody online who would like to speak, you can raise your hand using the Zoom raise your hand tool, but everybody online is like
Yeah.
a staff person.
Yeah, and you don't have anybody else. Okay.
Yeah.
Tanya's in the-
That's Tanya from
Okay.
Albemarle County.
Okay, so we're good. I'll move on then to legislative update. David, would you introduce yourselves and yourself?
Sure, yeah, so I'm David Blunt, I'm Deputy Director of Legislative Services here at TJPDC. First thing I'm gonna say is to apologize in advance, as I've had some laryngitis this week. And still trying to get back to full voice, which is good in two ways. My wife and son have been very happy this week, not having to listen to me, and maybe you all won't have to, as well. So, but just wanted to give you all a little update and follow up on some of the discussion that you had at your meeting in May on legislative activities, particularly some of the things that the working group had been addressing. Probably most importantly is actually two meetings that we had with the three state legislators that are representing Charlottesville and Albemarle. We met with Delegate Costin and Senator Deeds, and then separately met with Delegate Lawford. I think we did a good job of educating and informing them. I think particularly Delegate Costin and Delegate Lawford, having not been familiar with some of the discussions that stretched way back, prior to the legislation in 2009. So we talked to them about that, talked about the enabling legislation, picking back up after, I guess, that gap following the 2009 session, to talking about the regional transit partnership and the work of the partnership, and bringing one up to the formation of CARTA, and again, some of the work that had been going on with CARTA. They all asked really good questions. Delegate Lawford followed up, actually asked for some additional information during our meeting with her, particularly as it related to the organization and ridership for CAT and JAUNT and university system, and we were able to kind of with a team effort provide her with that information. I guess some of the takeaways, there was some emphasis that was stated, making sure that we're talking with UVA as this moves through, and that we are going to be able to provide as much detail as possible as to what we're working toward, what kind of projects, kind of enhancements that we're talking about. And I think also that everybody came away, which we certainly want to continue to do, is that we continue the conversation as we move along. In fact, I walked out of another meeting with Delegate Lawford yesterday, and it was the first thing that she mentioned to me was about CARTA and transportation in general. So she has already inquired about getting that. So again, good meetings. We'll continue to have some updates with them in the future. Other things, again, just as a follow-up to the meeting in May, the staff from the two jurisdictions have started talking internally about some of the revenue options that might be available, that might be feasible to look at, and knowing that there would be enabling authority needed for some of those to be enacted. So those discussions are going on. The working group that I mentioned earlier, which meets on a regular basis, is very close to finalizing a one-page, actually it's gonna be 2 pages. I like one-pagers, but we couldn't get it all on one page.
One shot.
There you go. You print front and back, like I still print. But looking at having an informational kind of background, educational piece where some of the things I mentioned, we discussed with the legislators, talking about the history, the work of the RTP, the transit vision plan, the transit governance study, and again, some of those things related to the initial work of this body, as well as the work of the staff working group. So once we get that in kind of its final draft form, we'll share that with you all and ask you all to review that and provide any comments that you may have in terms of additional information that needs to be in there, et cetera, et cetera. And then the final thing I would say, just as we're just kind of continuing to look at what's going on, what the landscape may be, headed into the next General Assembly session. We're really trying to watch what's going on in other parts of the state with regard to discussions that they're having about transportation. We just had some information came through the other day with regard to Northern Virginia Transportation Commission up there. It's working with, there's a multi-entity group called DMV Moves. It's not our DMV, it's District Maryland Virginia Moves. That's trying to primarily address WMATA, which is the metro system up there, and some of the bus transit issues up there. But some news coming out of them in terms of the endorsement of a funding concept. Looks like Hampton Roads may be coming back with some legislation that they had this past year to try to get some additional authority to increase some of the regional taxes in that area down there. That was passed by the legislature in detail. So just really just trying to keep an eye on things that are going on in different parts of the state and the state level as we move through the process with you all in the coming months. Well, glad to take any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions?
Grant Sparks has his hand up.
Oh, good. Grant.
Hey, David, quick question. You might have already done this, just putting this on your radar, but I would definitely encourage you and the team to touch base with your Commonwealth Transportation Board member. If you've already had conversations with him, that's great. I do know, watching the CVTA legislation as it was being developed, Carlos Brown, who was the CTB member at the time for the Richmond region, played a huge role to advocate for that legislation. So again, you might have already that might already be on your radar, but just bringing that up.
Thank you, Grant.
That's great. Anybody else? He doesn't have a hand up. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from board members, staff? All right. Well, David, we really appreciate it. Sorry about your laryngitis, but I think we could hear you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. As long as Gretchen can hear.
I got it. Yeah. She would have let us know if she could. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
She would have made some motions. All right. Our next agenda item is the prioritization study update. Taylor, well, yes,
Yes, it is. We included in your packet a final version of the prioritization study scope. The first scope of work that you all saw was the draft that we included in our grant application that was approved. And so after we received that approval, we got back together as a group, TJPDC staff, Charlottesville, and Albemarle staff, to workshop it to make sure it had covered every single activity that we'd be looking for before it went out to DRPT's bench consultants. So a couple key changes that are in there. We removed references to a steering committee after we re-examined the list that was in there. Really, that was a group of key staff that worked at each of the jurisdictions, and the steering committee would really be the CARTA board. And so we removed reference to that and recharacterized that as the core project team. We also added a few additional members to that project team, understanding that if they were to be doing this technical work, it should include other partners in the region who are doing the transit planning currently. And so that includes a staff member from PATH, which would likely be Lucinda, staff from the Charlottesville Albemarle MPO, Albemarle County Public Schools, and Charlottesville City Schools. And we wanted to make sure we covered all the bases there if this were to be our technical team. And then finally, we added an additional task just to clarify that we were looking for draft plan documents and final plan documents and whatever data we'd want the consultant to provide to us at the end. So those are the primary changes. In the scope of work, we did include both the clean version and a track changes version in your packet. So happy to take any clarifying questions or any other feedback before we approve this item.
So this is an action item.
Yes.
We need to vote on this.
Yes.
And accepting it. And let me open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
I guess maybe tell them what the next steps are with it does
Right.
approval and
Right.
forward with it.
Following approval, we plan to send it out to DRPT's list of bench consultants that they have and give them about a month to turn around proposals. Once we receive those, staff as a working group would take those and review them as a team before we make any selections. And we're probably looking at a mid or late September study kickoff as a timeframe.
Have a month to do this through initial grant funding.
And so am I understanding that the timeline that's presented within the study memo is itself not starting until that point that you just identified?
Right, the mid to late September.
Yeah, I wasn't here at the last meeting, I guess we'll talk about this, and I looked through it. Not wanting to cycle back, particularly since my time that I'll be involved in these things is only 5 months or so, but I just wondered the length of time that this is going to take. It's no criticism of anyone. I live in the world of consultants and studies, and how much of this has already been studied at something like with all of the myriad of things that we've done for CAT.
Yeah, we do have the benefit of not starting from scratch. So we're
What is this? I'm sorry, I did look at it, but can you just sort of typically explain to me again?
Yeah, part of what is driving that schedule is this is as long as we could possibly take. We have to spend this money in a set amount of time. So this is as long as we could possibly take to spend the money, but it could go faster depending on how quickly the analysis goes. We're also giving the consultants flexibility to help us how they will cut this schedule for us.
How is this going to be different than what was in the regional governance study that was done?
So we did the vision plan first, then the governance study to say, okay, how do we implement that vision? And this is more of the, okay, how do we do the implementation now that we have the governance in place of those things which you mentioned in the vision. And since then, we've also had a CAT TSP adopted, the TDP changes with Jaunt. UTS has changed their services some over the past couple of years. So there's some things that we want to catch up. There's also, we kind of want to open it up a little bit to see if there's things that we missed. We've had changes in political leadership over that time period as well. So we want to leave it a little bit flexible, but also say we're basing the work off of the transit vision plan, which then informed the governance study that led to CARTA, which is now leading to the CARTA priorities, and kind of have that logical flow to it, but also make sure that it's flexible.
So long as we're poking a little bit.
Feel free to vote.
That underlying concept of what we're doing this implementation study. I do wonder / worry, right? I think the goal would be that we come away with something that we're like, finally, we've done study number 4. And this will give us the roadmap of what we can actually then take and deploy into a product, right? And you just touched on kind of the interrelation of the intrinsically subsequent nature. We have a governance study, very robust, we've all read it. Now we're doing an implementation study and those are stacked on top of each other. I'm also thinking there are things in the governance study that are essential to the implementation process. The governance study deals centrally, and I think governance is centrally about, in large part, funding streams, which we are still deeply unsettled on. I think we haven't really had a tremendously, it doesn't feel like we've had a tremendously serious conversation about what asks we're going to make. So I guess I'm wondering how we have an off-the-shelf deployable product in an implementation study with such a massive block unsettled.
Yeah, so that's actually, we had this discussion earlier today, so it's very timely. Because again, when we're looking at this, should we be looking at a certain amount of priorities? And really the amount of priorities that come out of this study are going to be based in how much money do we have to actually fund this, which is part of why it takes us that long to have that prioritization discussion, because we're also having a parallel discussion about revenue and where that comes from and how that's going to work. And it hasn't been going so quickly. It's going to take some time to work through that discussion, but it's sort of those two discussions are informing each other at the same time. And so the size of our appetite for implementations is also going to be informed by the size of our appetite for additional revenue for transit.
So you may have created in your discussion earlier, maybe, I may have missed this, but there's no requests on the books that we're planning to make for the General Assembly next year, coming from Charlottesville or Albemarle.
I would say not at this time, there's not an official request.
I know we're not ready, but maybe we could just kind of get ready. I mean, in other words, I mean, I thought the governance study said the best idea, and maybe I'm just remembering selectively, is let's do a 1 cent sales tax that we have, people vote on. Seemed like of all the options that were there, that was the one that had the most support. Am I remembering this right, Christine?
Yes.
So why don't we just say, hey, we'd like to be able to do this. Go ahead and pitch it to the General Assembly. And if they don't vote on it this year, fine, they vote on it the following year, but.
It may take 2 years yet.
I don't know, maybe this is just the fact that it's living in the world of construction, but.
I guess I would
Feels
also,
like
that's,
it's like,
that's the point where I guess you all as the elected
Have to make a decision.
bodies have to get to that point.
And I do think we have to realize that in fact, to get to what you're saying, and Christine and I were having this discussion earlier, the localities are going to have to fund this transit implementation. The state is not going to be giving us money for, I mean, that's not going to happen.
They're granting authority.
We're an authority and we have to come up with the funding. Now, we have to go to them for permission, as we always do for almost anything. But we have to recognize that to get to what you're saying, we have to come up with a funding mechanism.
yeah, but we have to agree on what that's gonna be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it seems like to me though, that the community and our respective boards had said, okay, CARTA,
Go for
I'm
it.
putting you 4 people on there, what do you wanna do? Come back to a recommendation, and they could put it in our legislative packets for this.
So let's get response from Ben.
Maybe I'm being in too big of a hurry, but.
The one thing that sort of tempered our expectations of the timeline was feedback that we got from the legislators who said, we want to know what you're paying for before we give you that authority. So without going to them and saying, this is the priorities that we've set and this is how much money we're going to use to pay for it, they're a little hesitant to go to their fellow legislators and say, hey, can we get them some authority to raise taxes? Especially
Intrinsically suspecting of any localities having any amount of power.
Making sure that their thumb is on us, right? And I do think that that's true with that General Assembly and with the history of, if you can't go and explain to them exactly how you're gonna use the money, it's not so easy to get the money. And it's not easy to get the money anyway.
the one thing I will note though is by making this local investment, we aren't just going to be going it alone. Eventually, by improving the size of our transit system and the ridership of those transit systems, that increases the amount of state funding that comes in. So this is a short-term aggressive strategy for the local region to make, but it will have dividends down the line. It will bring in state and federal
It
funding.
just seems like when they ask, what is it you want to spend the money on? It's. Y'all came to us this past Monday, and gave us an update on how to get from red to green to blue, and y'all know what you want to do. Why can't we just say that it will cost this much of money? This is what it takes for mechanics and for, drivers, and this is what we think it's gonna take for infrastructure. I know we have those numbers at some level.
We
We
provided
could say,
Yeah.
this is our plan. We'd like to be able to raise money to do this plan.
So Pat did provide those numbers for different scenarios of investment on Monday night to the city council. That includes what Pat is looking at for fiscal year 27 and beyond. It does not include what John is looking at, doesn't look include what UVA is looking at, doesn't look at what we might
Why
want
do
to
we
look
care
at,
what
yeah.
they're looking at though?
Well, because we're gonna inform investment in those transit agencies as well and make sure that they're coordinating those investments with.
I think that we certainly want to do that, but I'm saying for this coming fall, and to go ahead and begin the process of getting money infused in the CAT. I mean, if John and the university did their own thing for another 5 years, I still think that there's plenty of work CAT could do. You guys have got the roadmap, you know what you want to do.
We have some options for city council, like I said, yes.
City council, when it comes down to money. These are massive investments, and even though you all pay for the some of the operational piece, we are on the hook for the capital.
Right.
Anyway,
I'm open for more thoughts from staff on this about timing. It looks like to me that the timing for a consultant is as much as 20 months. Is what,
Up to.
up to.
Yeah. Max.
Yeah, but that was the max you were talking.
Yeah.
Right, and that's,
So surely we're not gonna be waiting 20 months before we know, help us out with this a little bit, and I get.
Generally, once you put it out to the consultants, they'll come back and say, we can do that scope of work within this amount of time. We put that in there as a not to exceed. You cannot go beyond that amount because that's the grant terms.
So is the thought that the consultants' work will inform what we're going to, what the ask is? I'm just.
yes, because they're
There you go.
generating cost estimates that
Right.
are associated with these improvements.
you know what you want to do though, Ben. You could sit down at a table with you and
I probably could, but I shouldn't do it myself.
Garland.
I should probably do partners.
Find someone with a P stamp and call it official.
I really sympathize with the point you're bringing up here, because we announced the initial study for the 3-notch trail, right? And I was thinking, well, hell, it sure would be nice if that's done before I'm dead. Like, literally, right? I'm not sure at the point, right? And this doesn't even involve any brick and mortar, and it is still, well, potentially some stations, right? But we're not building, right? We're not building physical objects at the same scale. We're deploying new services. It feels like we should be faster on that. I get that we're constrained by a planning process, but it does feel like we could actually start to move the ball. The planning process is going to be 20 months. We know it will take probably 2 bites at the apple with the General Assembly. That does not sync up. We could potentially, if we start attacking presently, be able to have something ready to actually deploy something when we're ready to deploy something. I think that's not an unknown. I remember there was an adage when I was in my MPA program that really stuck with me, which is policy professionals will always want to, and by that I mean staff, right? Policy professionals will always want to have the most exquisite data to make a decision. And a policy decision maker is in a position of having to act with imperfect. I think we might already be at the imperfect data point. We can start making a decision, knowing that there will be work on the back end to make those fit, right? And I apologize. I realize I'm so much directing it.
No, for example, we're in the impact meetings like in the spring, and we at that point we were told by none of this is a criticism made by developer amazing even being think quality. But at that point, we were told we had 65 drivers and we got to 82, then everything would be great. And we found out last Monday, instead of 82, it needs to be
96 or something.
90 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, those sorts of investments are basically just like, it is funding literally FTEs. And to me, we could come up with something for the General Assembly where we say, this is plan. This is phase 1 of a larger plan. Maybe this is phase 0 of a larger plan. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but what we want to do this first time is to be able to make the investments in our drivers to begin to fund the system that our community wants. And we know the cost for that, we can estimate it out, come up with this. Again, I think we should I thought that all the sort of the end result of all the conversations about the funding sales tax. I would suggest we just stick with that and ask the General Assembly, this is our proposal. They say no, then we'll come back another time and put more information.
Let me ask a quick question, because I think Brian makes a really good point, and I understand though. Would it be helpful if we sat down with our representatives, which is what you all have already done, and really have an honest conversation about what exactly do they feel like we need to provide? Because I'm not sure that I know, like, maybe we just need to call a meeting next month or this week or something and sit down with them. David, I'm just throwing that out. Would that be helpful?
You know what, I was gonna say, one of the things that Grant mentioned earlier, something about the CVTA, one of the things that I think also helped to make them very successful was the specificity that they came in with.
Yeah, we were.
Which is what we're talking about here. You know, there's two different schools of thought, I think, on it. You know, you can take multiple bites at the apple on things. When I started out working in the General Assembly, there was a legislator there who had put the same bill in for almost 20 years to have Virginia move from being appointed school boards to elected school boards. And as you know, it finally passed in the early 1990s. You know, I think if you've got something that is not ready for prime time, it will get treated as not ready for prime time. And it will, you know, probably not get much of a hearing. I do appreciate what you say, because I think one of the things, and I don't know if this group has talked about it, I know we've talked about it in our working group, is if there's not going to be a specific proposal that is coming from the jurisdictions or from this group that the legislators representing you all are agreeing to put in, it is good to be able to be in a position to be able to act. You know, who knows what this next General Assembly session is going to be? You know, there's going to be a lot of focus on the budget. There's a 2-year budget. There's going to be gaps that they're going to be looking to fill. There's going to be a new administration that's going to need time to get up and running. All that being said, we could get down there and things start gelling and coalescing towards doing, you know, some work in transportation. And we may be in a position to be able to jump on board the train.
Do we have a sense of what that specificity would be and what they would need? Because, I mean, are we just, I mean, I like the idea of, you know, this is the first phase and then this is the second phase, because you can be more specific about a phase 1 and let the phase that inform phase 2, right? So I like that idea. Does that help us at all? I'm just, yeah, I don't know.
We would have to agree on what we were actually trying to do with
Phase 1.
phase 1. It's something that we're gonna have to do through FY27 budget discussions about what CAT is doing in FY27, which is why we're starting this discussion fairly early in the budget process. We may have that opportunity to be very specific about what we think we want to fund with CAT services, but then we also need to think about what other things were in the transit vision plan that aren't just the local CAT improvements that we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think you do that in phases. And we've got a city council retreat in a few weeks, and one of the big topics is going to be transit. And there is going to have to be a discussion, a shift at some point from, I don't know what this looks like. CAT is a city department, it's funded through the city budget. You know, my thought would be that this body would help basically be the way of garnering revenue to feed over to CAT.
And I agree, that's what I thought too, yeah, I agree.
But I mean, to me, even if you could get, you all know what we'd like to do to be able to get to a 30-minute model. You've got that scoped out. While we couldn't say, we want to make an initial, this is supplementing work that's already being done in the city. Yeah, that'll be fantastic.
I didn't really address your question in terms of, you know, meeting with the legislator. Certainly, if you wanted to do that, I mean, I think that fits in line with the continuing conversation we were talking about having with them, or you all as members of this board or members of city council and board of supervising advisors having conversations with them.
I just wondered if that would help to have a sit down conversation, if they could help us with it, but you all know, I think, better. What that might look like, or if that would actually be helpful.
I think with regard to the specificity, when we met with them, it was like as much specificity as possible. I don't know that there was specificity.
We don't need to be
on-
to hear that.
I do want to just
Agree.
raise before we get off this, I do agree with Brian, that I think we should be talking seriously. with General Assembly about solutions sooner rather than later. I don't know that that conversation needs to be entirely contingent on, the implementation study. I do want to also just voice this for the record, because we're talking about specific solutions. And I know Diane, and David both know this because they've heard me express this, but I'm personally quite chilly. Sales tax is the first way we would look to fund this. That's a sentiment I've similarly expressed on school capital. The difference is the school capital, there's already significant political momentum in the General Assembly over multiple iterations behind sales tax being the way to fund that. Here, we don't have that momentum binding us to what I think is probably the least equitable tax source that we could use. And I would much rather look at different funding options unless I'm radically outvoted. And that being said, I also hate Dillon rule. I would still be supportive of requesting the authority for it, but I would vote against it on the board to actually exercise that authority.
Well, and I guess I'd have to also point out that you, as localities, already have some powers to raise taxes. And if you could come to agreements together on taxes that you want to raise locally, they're already within your powers so that they go towards transit services this year or in the future years. You're already well within your powers to do that. And maybe want to explore that if the legislative option doesn't open up an opportunity.
And I guess I just comment that I understand what you're saying. Having said that, the advantage, and I use that because I understand it's not a great tax. No taxes are great. Having said that, it's the tax that gets us the furthest without having to layer all kinds of taxes on top of each other, I would think, to make it work, if that makes sense.
No, I get that it gets us quite far, and also like, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but it's politically easier, right? It's politically easier than the equivalent amount of property tax. My understanding of the data is that the equivalent amount of property tax actually does burden our poorest people less. However, than once in sales tax.
Well, Rick, I mean, we can talk about, I'd like to add a tax to Airbnb. And use it, but that's not going. We need it, that's only gonna be a little small sliver of what we need. And it's not as consistent as a sales tax, right? So there are problems with it. But yeah, I mean, I think all of us could come up with some small tax that we would like to use. But I think I appreciate what Ted was saying about the sales tax.
And I think this conversation does speak to the point that there's a lot of discussion still happening at the staff level and staff to elected level to make sure that there is consensus before going in with an ask.
Right.
Because this isn't something we want to waver locally on and then expect the state to support holistically, that we're all in consensus. That's the part where we are now, is we need to get to November.
And if
We need to get to December and make sure that this is the source that you're asking for authority to levy.
And that's the problem, because if we're not in consensus, to take it to the General Assembly would just be disastrous.
Yep. And then
And
Councilor
be a
Pinkston also,
harder comeback, I think.
I can appreciate what you're saying about, we know the plan, we know what we want to be doing, right? We have study after study, we have system optimization plan. I think it's really important to note that the transit vision plan is for the entire 6 jurisdiction region. It has commuter service out to the rural areas. It has bus rapid transit up 29. It has expanding the drivers, the frequency of the existing service. I think what we need this implementation plan to do is say, okay, yes, what you guys want to do just for CAT may be the phase 1. We also have to keep in mind the associated costs for the jaunt ADA that's going to come with that system optimization. And then what is the second phase and what is the third phase? How are we saying to the General Assembly, we have mapped out exactly what we want to do in the order we want to do it. This is what it's going to cost and this is what we're going to start with. I think we know what we want to start with. I don't think we have as long of a roadmap to be able to tell them. If we were to get the authority and we were to get the revenue, how are we gonna spend it and in what order, on which priorities? We would be able to speak to the CAT system optimization plan, but that's all at this point.
And right now, the three of us don't even agree on the funding source, I'm just saying. And I'm not picking on Mike or any of us, I'm just saying that that's
That's the
we
work that's
agree.
needing to happen right now.
That's right.
So we are point moving this.
I wanna just ask to switch us to something else. So consultants are gonna do this work for us.
Yes.
I am very concerned about the consultant. Do we pay our consultants enough to get? I'm just saying that what our experience has been with consultants, well, is that they zoom in, sometimes we can't hear them. They're not, I mean, I'm just saying, I wanna make sure if we're gonna do this.
Yep.
And we're going to pay consultants, are we offering enough money for the consultants to really work with us and get the product that we want? Because I don't wanna sit in another meeting with a consultant, zooming in from Richmond and fading in and out, and we can't understand what they're saying. And we've all been there in multiple meetings with multiple consultants.
Yeah, you noted this in the last meeting and we have it in there. And when we negotiate the contract, we will make sure that they understand that they are expected to be here in person anytime they're presenting to the board.
And if we need to pay, if it's a matter of payment, right, if we're not paying them enough, then say so and let us at least understand, because maybe we need to up that payment some to get really good quality consultants that are willing to come here and talk to us.
No zooming from God.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's really frustrating, yeah. And we've had them zooming from Richmond and we can't follow, you know. Anyway, enough said. Yes.
I'm ready for the motion.
I'm ready.
I'm ready this time. I got
If
it.
you have the motion, you know what they're asking you, it's right here.
Mm.
Whatever, you don't have to read all of that, the motion is very clear.
Imagine it.
Let me have that.
I'd like to move
Yeah.
that we adopt the
Yeah.
prioritization study update as presented in the agenda in the packet.
I'll second the motion.
There you go. Does that work? That motion work for everybody? Okay, would you call roll?
Counselor Pinkston,
Yes.
Supervisor McKeel,
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt,
Aye.
Right, the voting is really short. All right, so that passed. All right. And I guess maybe we should continue this discussion, or at least staff help us with the timelines, we can help. Whatever, maybe we need an agenda item to just sit and thrash it out and talk about, right?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have continuing conversations in the city. Executive offices, city county executive offices and finance budget folks are gonna continue discussions for the next 2 months to help give us more solid recommendations.
Well, I will say, you know, and I'll stop with this, but one of the advantage of getting UVA at the table with us and the advantage of getting the two school systems at the table is increased ridership means more money. And that's a plus. So, with that. All right, RTP transition update, Christine.
Okay, there was a memo within your packet. We've been talking for a little while as CARTA ramped up that the RTP would eventually sunset, just really high level, you know, RTP was established 2017. We all know that. It came out of the transit coordination study that really identified before you should establish an authority, some more work needed to be done locally on communication coordination, you know, visioning. And so the RTP has successfully met that critical role in building consensus, you know, approving the vision plan. It launched the transit expansion study in Albemarle, which resulted in the microtransit pilot. It's completed the transit governance study, which recommended starting up CARTA, laying the foundation for CARTA. I think we've hit a significant milestone. We want to be really mindful of resources and not have duplicative meetings going on into perpetuity. And so, you know, staff would recommend that the last meeting of the regional transit partnership be December of 2025 of this year. And then at that time, we'll reflect more formally on the accomplishments and make sure we pay respect to the people that got us to where we are now, but then beginning of the 2026 calendar year that we would have CARTA serve in that now regional forum for all discussions on planning and decision-making related to transit in the region.
Thoughts?
Is everyone on the RTP know that this is happening?
Yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We started the RTP with the intentions. I said, we need to work ourselves out of a job. We need to get to an authority which will bring in the money for what we need to do. But we had to concentrate first on, can we all play in the same sandbox together? Can we prove to the community that we can play in the same sandbox and work together? And so in all those studies we did, people said, well, you all didn't do anything as a regional transit partnership. And I said, well, look at all that work we did preparing us for this point in time. So, yeah. And I think that the partnership members understand that.
And with our CARTA prioritization study, we have that project team and you all still involved. So a lot of the same people who were involved at the table at RTP will be still at the table as part of that study.
So we will be announcing this. We don't need to take a vote on this.
No, that's just our recommendation. If you guys wanted to give us any feedback on that, we would love to hear it.
I think it's appropriate, and we'll talk about that in the next partnership meeting, so people are aware. Yeah. Any other comments on that? Then we are at
Is that not received?
updates and reminders.
I'm sorry, was that not received as an action item? I guess there'd be, is it an action item to RTP?
Is probably would be an action item to, if anyone votes on it, be the RTP.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why that's hence my question. I was like, are we about to vote on something?
No.
Is it
Somebody else's body.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would not do this as an action.
We'd said maybe a little bit longer, but if we're ready, we're ready. That's great, because it will help us move along fast. Okay, other business updates, reminders. I don't have any other than that our next meeting is September the 25th, which would be the CARTA meeting.
Yes.
And so hearing no objections, I will adjourn us to September 25th. All right.
You really finished in 50 minutes?
Yeah, we did good.
We did.
48 minutes.
Stop the recording.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.